America's top cybersecurity expert on network television, CEO of Matrix Force, and #1 best-selling author of Streamlining Technology, Kevin Free.
Wesley Singer talks to one cyber expert who called privacy the biggest issue of all time.
Kevin Free is here with us. You just put a book out about this, right?
I did. Came out in August, and it went #1 on Amazon in August.
So obviously, this is an issue.
Keep your information safe from a cyber attack.
It's sitting there idle, just waiting to be owned. Privacy is probably one of the biggest issues of our time. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, 4,000 people are hacked by ransomware every day. If we don't step up and be proactive about our privacy, we're all going to be the victims of any of that. You see, I created the Delta method for streamlining technology and offering a better customer experience. So have the courage to increase your understanding of cybersecurity, take action on what you learn. You don't want random unknown IT guys. You want Matrix Force. We protect. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Kevin Free, and we're going to cover 7 critical cybersecurity tactics to beat competitors and avoid damages. We hear the same insanity every day, from Colonial Pipeline to the city of Tulsa getting hit by ransomware or some kind of cyber attack. What you don't hear is the things that could actually save and help your bank account, which is all the other people that aren't reported on, and that's what we're covering here today. You see, cybersecurity is not a technology problem, it's a business problem. Just like the Oakland A's revolutionized baseball by looking at hits, it's now time for us to take a business approach and attack what's actually happening and flip it upside down. The stat is less than 5% of data breaches are actually by true hackers. The reality is it's only like 1%. The other 4% is some kind of product obsolescence that just wasn't replaced, that left an opening, and all the other is human error. So in a typical business approach, someone from IT comes to management and says, hey, this needs to be like Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. We need to add 7 layers of products, and they all need to be from different vendors. And just like all the traps in the Temple of Doom, they all need to be different. Here, I'll draw it out for you. So lots of money is spent on complicated products. None of them are made to work together or aware of each other. And if Microsoft makes a change, then all of them fall down just like dominoes. It's the exact same story as Harrison Ford in the Temple of Doom. He got through all of those traps, and then he went on to make 20 more movies. For those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself. I'm not a famous felon hacker from the FBI's most wanted list, but my name is literally a trademark for the cybersecurity industry at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. I believe that the normal approach to business and technology is a horrible experience for everyone. So I created the Delta method to eliminate IT problems with no one compensated by product sales or billable hours to reduce your worry. You may have seen me at Harvard or NASDAQ or on my national TV news segments, and only in America could a poor handicapped kid from small town Oklahoma become one of the world's most recognized cybers. Now, the big thing that we're doing today is ransomware in particular, but all cybersecurity breaches are such nasty things and the worst things that can happen to you and your computer. So we're giving away all the valuable secrets that were in my best-selling book, Easy Prey, so that you could run through everything you need to do for ransomware prevention for free. And then also to help all of that human error, we're providing data breach training for free as we do nationwide. It's over a $1,200 value. Now, if you're like me, I like to take problems and jump to the end. And most business leaders think, well, we can't stop this unstoppable force, so we'll just simply call up our insurance agent and we'll get cybersecurity insurance, and that's the best we can do. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't do anything for your lost revenue. It doesn't do anything for disgruntled employees. It doesn't do anything for your reputation damage. And eventually, people that have multiple breaches or big enough breaches, they usually go out of business in less than 3 years. So in our industry, we simply can't get cybersecurity insurance, and some industries cannot. So you should start evaluating and budgeting for that. There are many, many variables, and the folks that do your auto and business insurance, just general, may not be the right people. You'll likely need to have specialists that can talk specifically about what's covered and what's not in your cybersecurity insurance. I have a whole nother segment that I do with other insurance agencies and associations that go specifically through this. If you represent an insurance agency on here today, please let me know. I'd be happy to speak to your association and include all the things that we've shared at Harvard and NASDAQ. Now, the biggest thing that everyone is hearing on is you need to get Bitcoin because it'll make you rich. Well, it is a favorite type of currency for cybercrime. But what people don't realize is at some point it all has to start with cash or end with cash. And in America, to set up a Bitcoin account, you literally have to give away all of your identity to Cyber Cafe or your favorite exchange. You have to give away your social security number, your picture, your driver's license number, where you live, and as well as account numbers for if you use your cable bill or utility bill for proof. It takes up to 2 weeks to get a Bitcoin account. Most of the ransom start at the minimum of 2 weeks and then go up from there. Some don't do anything and they won't unencrypt after 2 weeks. So if you don't already have a Bitcoin account, I recommend you get one. The other thing that's been required by the federal government since 2018 is that everyone have an incident response posted if they have a breach. I'm going to show you in a second a better idea. And then guess what? If you're not using vetted IT support that we'll talk about next, then any cybersecurity claims for insurance purposes are most likely going to be voided. Now, if you go to matrixforce.com, we show right on the homepage a button for incident response. It's actually a requirement of cybersecurity firms and also of anybody that's been breached, but most do not have them. I like to teach clients to turn this around. So instead of scrambling and reacting to an emergent situation, why not create an incident response page? You don't have to put it on your home page, but you can link it at any time. And it has general information of this is our procedure. If something happens, this is where it's going to be posted. that's what we have as an example for clients. We also have a free download for an incident response template. And again, I don't understand it, but almost no one in our industry of cybersecurity has incident response listed on their front page. They have nothing about SolarWinds or Microsoft Reach or any of those things. And instead of responding each time there's something in the news, we have a general statement. And if there is an incident response, then we can post it and add it. And so it's a normal course of business. We're always ahead of the competition and the news because we've been proactive about it. And we believe that you should do that too. And it's simply something free. If you have the format, go out and do it. Now, the number one tactic for cybersecurity that you need to know is what I mentioned earlier, is that you have to use vetted IT support. The dirty, dirty secret in our industry is that it is unregulated. There is no license. There is no computer malpractice in our industry. So everybody talks about this legendary thing called managed services, which is a fake fairy tale. And then they'll add, I'm an MSP XYZ on top of it, and then talk about all their awards, and they do great stuff, and they're bonded like tree trimmers, and they work real fast, and wink, wink, everybody trusts us. That no longer flies today. It's called government and industry authorities. There's no award to buy or paid advertising that now you can fake your credibility. There are 5 things for vetted IT support. You have to be a C corporation. So you have a board and ownership that's listed publicly to protect customers from fraud. You have to have a trademark and patents for a value proposition of what you do. Those can be searched at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. You need to have a competency that's specialist. You can't do everything in the IT industry. Not IBM, not Microsoft, not Google. None of them do everything, and nobody locally in your town can do that either. Fourth, you have to be a published authority to actually show what you can do ahead of time. So the whole try before you buy, people should be able to show that as well. And then lastly, you really have to do the regulation compliance. It's no longer to say, yeah, we do it. You should have it published publicly and provided not on as requested, but it should always be out there ahead of time. So the biggest thing if you're using vetted IT support is they should have a compliance check form on their website that is signed off by the CEO or an officer that actually says they do all the things that's required, and here's specifically what they do, and this is the time of year that they do it. That's a real simple thing. If you want to ask for other information, you can do that. Everyone is required in our industry to have a vetted page. So instead of forcing clients to have to go and search at Cisco or Microsoft or Apple to figure out if they have any competency, and then go to U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and then go to the Secretary of State, and then look up New York Times or Amazon, and then go to the FTC and see if they're listed, they should have a page where all that is shown right up front and make it easy. By law, since 2018, by the FTC and IRS, you're required to have a security plan, a service level agreement, meaning a contract for what you're supposed to be getting, and a performance, and all of that is required. So it looks like this, and this doesn't seem like a big deal, and everybody should have this on their website for easy access. But if you go and look up any IT vendor, it's just like Price's Law. There's 1 out of 100 that are actually following this, and that's why only 10% of our industry is vetted and is putting customers at high risk. You should be able to look up any vendor and they should have these 5 things. Their competency may be phones or Cisco or IBM or other things, but the rest of it is something that you should readily be able to pull down without having to ask. Now, the second tactic is hitting that 95% of what your problem, which is human error. It's called the Employee Secure Score. It's just like the FICO score that you have, because everything in business is about having a measurement, and you can either be guessing or you can know. Employee Secure Score is by individual and by organization. So if you have some weak points, you already know what they are. We're giving away free data breach training for this reason. A lot of people are taken in by the famous hacker from FBI's Most Wanted list, and they pay 3 years and exorbitant costs for syndicated emails that come out and videos each month. There's no reason to do that. For 15 minutes per person a year, you can run people through data breach training. They can take it multiple times if they want. It's about 1 to 2 minutes a week that you get a question with a 1-minute video, and people are up to date with what the latest scams are. In addition, you get phishing and dark web scans, so you're testing people for that, and they get run through what are the common things. And then finally, you know what your risk is, and you can prove it to customers or anybody else. Now, one of the biggest scams that's talked about in our industry, and most experts can't even succinctly describe it, is password protection. They talk about 2FA and MFA and multi-factor authentication and all of these things. Well, that's all it is password protection. It's something you know, which most of the time you don't, which is your password, and something you have, which today is your phone, that's running an app called an authenticator. When the internet first started, everybody did the same thing. They came up with a favorite word or phrase, and they used that over and over. It may have even been password. And then things changed, and the rule was you had to have a capital letter. And so everybody went, I'll make the first character a capital letter. And they use their special word everywhere, except now it had a capital letter. Then security got even more stringent, and it was required to have a number. And so people said, well, I'll look down at the keyboard. Oh, 1. It's the first 1. I'll do a 1. So they did a capital letter, their special word, and the number 1, and they used it everywhere. And then security got even tougher, and you have to come up with a symbol. And so everybody did the same thing again. They looked down at the keyboard and said, well, I have probably a couple of choices. I won't remember this, so right above the 1 is an exclamation, or this is kind of important, maybe I'll make it the $sign. And so everybody did an exclamation point or a $sign, and everything was great. Fast forward to today, it's called the NIST from the federal government. They come out with a report every year. Today, the NIST says, hey, let's start getting away and making passwords. So they only change like once or twice a year at most. They should be longer than what was in the past. and you should definitely use the authenticator to go with it because they're easily hacked no matter what you do. Now, what happened is last year, a very well-meaning FBI agent in Portland published a blog post that said, hey, passwords need to be 14 characters, they need to be complex, and they need to expire every 30 days. And people ran with that. That's not the case anymore, but if you get from this comedic segment from whatever favorite comedian you have, you probably need to change your password. And one of the things that I will give you is an idea of how to approach passwords practical. So it goes without saying you should have multi-factor authentication or password protection on everything. It is not a silver bullet. It does not make you invincible. If you go out and you regularly use wireless and then you log in with your two-factor authentication, there's likely a hacker that is watching that and can bypass what you have. So it is better protection than anything else, but it's not a silver bullet. And then the biggest part is you have to learn how to protect your password and remember your password. So everybody today says, I'll get a password manager, and they just give up all recollections they have. They also, all the major password managers have been breached at some point. So every password that's ever been used is floating around on the dark web and is just being resold over and over. So I encourage everyone to come up with a game of their own, not to share it with anybody, but you can make things that are really practical to use that is still different every service, but that you can remember. I like to talk about the most that people can remember is 10 characters. Passwords should only change maybe once or twice a year. If you come up with a keyword or phrase and a symbol and a number, that's fine. You may use some standard things I use in my example. The numbers you should use, obviously, is not your favorite jersey or someone's birthday. It should be something that's a memorable date for you or a memorable number for you. In this example I'm using, I love Walter Bond, and so we're using shark as a base word, $signs because this is big business, and everything now is going back to history, so I picked a number from 1890. You can do something like, instead of putting the numbers at the end, you can put them at the middle. The same thing with symbols. And in this example, I'm putting capital letters at the end. One variation that I kind of teach, and you can come up with your own game, and you should, but if you take the first letter and the last letter of any service that you use, you can substitute that for the beginning letter of whatever your key phrase is. So if you're using shark, if I want to log into my computer or my personal account, I can use KF. And I capitalize K and the F is small. So the word that you have that you start off with may be nonsensical. It won't start with a capital. Your symbol and numbers are in the middle. But you always know, based upon the service, that you can change. So if I go to Facebook, I'll change the S to an FK. Same thing for LinkedIn, LN. There are some very simple conventions that you can do like this, where you can always remember your password and not be dependent on a password manager, still have the authenticator. Multi-factor authentication costs you nothing. It's the most reasonable thing to do. There's no reason why you shouldn't use it. If you have an easy to remember passwords without a password manager, you're much ahead of the competition. And then if you don't want to be prompted, you have a computer behind a locked door, you can check the box that says, don't ask me for password authentication every time. Now, the number 4 tactic is email. Email is for transactions only. It shouldn't be used for everything in your business to run it. If your business runs primarily on email, you're going to be out of business in 10 years. Email can only be used against you. Look at any political figure, celebrity, any kind of business that's had a breach. It's always been business email compromise. It's nothing that a hacker has done. It's something simply that people didn't read, didn't take a minute to think. They forwarded it all over. All of their management didn't take a minute to think. And then they usually did some kind of financial transaction that only they had access to and responsible for. And the bank couldn't do anything about it. Your attorney can't do anything about it. Your IT people didn't have anything to do with it. And it was simply called, comes back to you, from anybody from Cochran on Shark Tank to you go down the list. Email is a fax of the 90s. It was meant to be a delivery for a letter or a bill. You should have a rule in your business that says we're only going to do email for transactions. Anything that you send, if you think about it, probably has personally identifiable information. If you're sending it just as a regular email, then anybody can capture it, they can make a copy of it, and they can send it back to you. So if you're doing POs, invoices, any kind of personally identifiable information with an account number, address, a phone number, a person's name, that can now all be impersonated. Most people are violating general rules by simply not using encrypted email. Encrypted email in Office 365, for instance, is free. Definitely, if you're sending an attachment, it should be sent encrypted. Most encryption, all it requires is knowing what keywords, secure, confidential, those kind of things are the only things that you should have to put in the subject and it'll be sent. The other part about email is for free, most systems have a retention rule. Email can only hurt you. Ask any attorney, and the game is to do discovery, and if one employee has an email and other employees that are involved in the chain don't, then they automatically lose because they can't produce evidence of what a chain of evidence. Anything that's an email is transient and should be put into business systems. For that reason, it's a standard business rule. Most correspondence you should only keep for 3 years. If they're highly sensitive or financial things, you can keep them for 7 years. That's only the record of transmission. You can have those and save them in business systems and eliminate them from email. If you get away from email, you stop being reactive and you start being proactive for business. And all the productivity loss of 60% of people that don't do transactions or wasting time on email goes away, as well as all the legal problems. Social media. Social media should be limited to education only. It's another necessary evil in our environment, but it's the biggest place where ransomware comes from, hostile work environment litigation, and it's where all your reputation damage comes from. So for social media, the big myth is you should constantly do content all the time and it's going to help you be found by people. It's the biggest myth in the world. This event was publicized to 21 million people on LinkedIn multiple times, plus other channels, plus emails, plus phone calls, plus sending physical mail invites. Less than 100 people took any kind of action on that, and that's the same kind of result. That's the best you can ever help for social media, and none of that helped drive people to the event by itself. If you're going to do social media, it should be business oriented, and just like this, it should be educational and actionable and something that's different than everybody else Like in our industry, people are talking strictly about bits and bytes, and no one really cares or understands, and they either pay it or they don't pay it just because it may be a cost of business, or they just decide not to do anything. The biggest part of social media too is built into every copy of Windows. You can make it so the first user is not administrator for the machine, and so they can't install software. There are simple and easy ways around that. The biggest one is to have a non-administrator account on your network that you could freely give out, that is a local administrator for workstation, but not on the network, and can be used to install software. If that password gets out, you can reset it in one place. It's reset everywhere, and that's still, you have good controls. Encryption. Encryption is free. Just like you lock the doors to your house and lock the doors to your car, it's now time to lock the doors on your computer, and that's with encryption. Every copy of Windows has something called BitLocker with a check of a button that you can encrypt all the data on a computer. If you have encryption, it's the only safe harbor from a data breach. If computers are stolen, notebook taken, those kind of things. In the past, people, all they had to do was reinstall a new operating system and they had access to all the data. If you have encryption, that's not the case. They can't get into it. The only downside is you do need to save the keys. If you lose the key, then you have to reinstall it. So just like everything else, you have a backup for the backup. If you don't have encryption everywhere, including even like your website, it's a dead giveaway that you don't care about customers and that you're an easy target. Anybody that goes to a website, including someone that says they're in the IT industry and there's no lockup there, or there's a broken message about this is not a safe site, you need to move on. Now, everything we've provided so far and talked about is free. It's just simply taking action, because you know in your industry, you most likely don't have incident response. You don't have all the other things that we've talked about and taken advantage of because it takes time. That's the same thing with a cybersecurity exam. If you publish that you do a cybersecurity exam, you will be ahead of Price's Law, where you're the 1% that actually does this and you're different than anybody in your industry. At minimum, if you decide, hey, I don't want to publish anything about it or leverage it, but I do want to do it, one of the things you get is a work plan each year that says, hey, here's a list of low, medium, and high risks that you want to try to eliminate each year. It's not reasonable to try and eliminate all things in a year. It may not be feasible even. It may not be business practical. There's some things that you have to run business a certain way and you're going to take on the risk. This is required by the IRS and the FTC since 2018. Now, you have to use vetted IT support to do this. You can't use people that are faking it in the IT industry. This is not something you can have done by your attorney. This is not a legal document or litigation in court. It's not something your CPA can do. This is not a tax or financial issue. One of the things you should get is a system plan with it so you can use it for management and disaster recovery going forward. You should get top 10 policies and procedures. That's all you need. You don't need 100 of them. That's all that's required by the federal government. And if you publish this, you ask any sales or marketing person in any firm in any industry if this is a lever that they can leverage, they can use versus the competition, and they're going to say yes, because you care more about your customers than anybody else in the industry. So you most likely don't have a system plan. You aren't doing data breach training. You don't have vetted IT support. You're not publishing anything that's any different than any of your competitors, so you look the same, and you're probably high risk for losing money. So it's time to get serious. So there's 3 simple steps. For everybody that's on this webinar, we have you listed by your email address. Let us know in the questions if you have if you want to change that or if you have any kind of concerns. But we're going to provide the ransomware prevention blueprint to you for free and give you the access to the free data breach training for your whole staff. If you have questions, don't have time, other concerns, the easiest thing to do is do a 10-minute consult with us, and we'd be happy to do that. The last step, almost no one does it, and the common objection, and I just heard one yesterday, it was from the oil industry. Hey, Kevin, I'm not going to do this. Everything you're saying I know will be at my peril if I don't do what you say. But I'm not going to do any of this stuff until a customer comes to me and asks. Well, think about that for a minute. It's a little too late. With the Colonial Pipeline ransomware breach, it was in the Washington Post. We forwarded that article to everyone, and everybody in the oil industries is now going to have the Department of Homeland Security come and verify that for their supply chain, they have a risk exam. Why wait until you get burned or until emergency to prepare for disaster, or in this case, something like taxes that you know is going to happen? First step is free. We're giving all this away. If you have any kind of questions on the ransomware blueprint, we're happy to answer those at no cost, no obligation. Same thing for the data breach training. It's the smartest thing that you can do. If you have any kind of concerns, you can call up a cyberist. There's no hourly techs here, and there's no commissioned salespeople to sell anything to you. Simply answer your questions. If you'd like to have some other services, they'd be happy to talk to you about that to see if it's fit. Just simply go to matrixforce.com and click on schedule a consult. Unlike just about everybody in our industry, we answer the phones live. So there's no dead voicemail or some weird system to try to get through. We are offering, for much less than the cost of KnowBe4 or any of those other lower end offerings that are simply do things like data breach training alone, we're offering a full risk exam for you. Not only that, we're offering a badge that you can publicize where you can show that you use vetted IT support and who you use. That's also a requirement. With your risk exam, you get a system plan. Everybody has a system plan that has consolidated in one document all the critical things about their system for management and disaster recovery, and an overview diagram to at a glance show for management. Everybody has that. You have your staff training and acknowledgement, and then you have your top 10 policies and procedures, dark web scan, for less than coffee and office supplies per each of your staff per month. You can have all of that covered. If you'd like to schedule with me personally, just simply go to matrixforce.com and schedule a consult. You can reach out to me via email. You can schedule a call with me or any of our cyberists. And listen, it's time to take action today. The internet's a dangerous place. Don't be easy prey.